Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you're managing to cool down a little bit this week. While muggy, humid, certainly not as hot as it was last week. And so I hope this message, this reflection, this postscript finds you well and perhaps a little more comfortable than you were last week. I, on Sunday, spoke of these conflicts that we find ourselves in, not just as individuals, but as communities as well. And I had a little fun. It gave me the opportunity to return to some of my undergraduate quandaries, specifically the liar's paradox. As a review for those that may not have caught Sunday's sermon or who listened but were a little thrown by the way in which I was pushing through that reflection, the liar's paradox is really an examination of contradiction in our language. So how can you or I construct a sentence that is contradictory? Because we know we can. English allows that. But that's problematic for us if we're trying to communicate information or be consistent. So for example, if I say this statement is false and you say that's a true statement, then it's a false statement. But if it's a false statement, well, the statement said it was false, so it's a true statement. You get the picture. We can wind our way into some difficult spots, and I'm reminded of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Friedrich Nietzsche, both who said consistency is the hobgoblin of either small or foolish minds. Nevertheless, we do strive for consistency, in part not only to be predictable, but dependable, right? We want people to depend on coming to this space, for example, and trusting that they're going to get affirmation, they're going to get support, they're going to get the announcement of the gospel and the good news that they are beloved and beheld. However, we do find ourselves in contradictions because we all gather weekly, sometimes daily, and we aspire, we pray, we sing, we hope for a different world. We hope we can do better in being a part of this world to come, this kingdom come. And yet, you and I both know that our actions don't always align with what we say, our aspiration. The Apostle Paul said this in his many letters to different churches around the Mediterranean, and I'm sure you've been confronted with this predicament. Jesus, in the passage from which I preached this week, tells his disciples and those who had gathered around him to deny themselves in order to follow him more faithfully and fully. You might be asking, well, how do I do that? Because I say that I do want to follow Jesus, but if it means I have to deny myself, there's a rub there. Therein lies some contradiction. What's the self that's following Jesus if I've already denied the self, right? What remains of self? On Sunday, I tried to put out a suggestion for us to think about some of these difficult passages and these predicaments we find ourselves in. We have two selves at the very least, maybe more, that are always in conflict with each other because on one hand, we have a self that has been programmed or has internalized programming and pressure to take certain steps, to pursue certain dreams, passions, to do things a certain way. And our value in that level or at that level is derived from our, you could say, conformity to certain rules and practices. There is another self that is not beholden to those internal programs that are operating in us at all times. I like to think of this as two levels of awareness. You've heard me preach on that before. You have an ordinary awareness, a kind of daily natural attitude, and then you have a level of spiritual awareness. Now, the daily natural attitude has more to do with kind of our ego, our fears about being harmed, injured, wrong. Like we are very concerned, even anxious about some of these possible situations. And so we do everything we can to control things. We try to make the right choices, or we do the choices that are going to get us ahead. But all the while, there's this other self that is connected to a source, a creative, benevolent source of all life. And it says that we are not reducible to those choices. And even if we don't supposedly make these right choices, we are still loved. We are celebrated. We are saved from all of our misadventures, right? And I think that maybe the human experience is just that, this struggle between these competing selves. And I think Jesus is tapping into that. And we try to acknowledge that struggle here at First St. Andrews. So I hope that maybe you walked away with a sense of that struggle, but also a hope that you can lean more fully into this deeper spiritual sense of self so that you can lessen some of that anxiety, some of those fears which haunt us, plague us, and keep us from really being the fullest versions of ourselves that we were created to be. It's an ongoing process, dare I say, a lifelong journey, but thankfully we don't have to do it alone. We're here together as a community, and I'm glad you took a little bit of time to participate in community today during our postscript. As always, send me a note, pass on a message to me. Let me know what you think about this. I'd be happy to reflect further with you or to get some constructive feedback, right? Maybe you want to challenge this. It's all fine. I encourage it, and I look forward to seeing you at our next postscript. Thank you so much.